Hello there. Hope things are going well with you. This is just a short video that's designed to explore the difference between the Keynesian and the classical school view on the causes of unemployment. We'll also get into the macro policy solutions to this issue, this problem of unemployment. Keynesian and classical economists have very different views on what causes unemployment. However, both schools of thought acknowledge the existence of frictional, seasonal, and structural unemployment. You should already know what these terms mean by now. Why don't you pause the video for a minute and check your understanding by writing out a definition for each of these three terms. Okay, so hopefully you've done that now. Let's do a quick recap. Frictional unemployment happens when somebody is out of work because they're in between jobs. So this type of unemployment is short term and thus nothing serious to worry about. All economies suffer from it. There'll always be people moving from one job to another in search of higher pay or promotion or a myriad of other reasons. The second type of unemployment is seasonal unemployment. This type of unemployment happens when workers are temporarily laid off because they work in an industry that's subject to seasonal demand. A good example might be an ice cream seller who's only employed in the summer months. Structural unemployment is more serious. It's caused when an industry goes into decline. A good example might be an unemployed bloke from Scunthorpe who used to work for British Steel. They lost their job when British Steel closed down because it was no longer internationally competitive. Cyclical unemployment is caused by a recession. Keynesians believe that the level of output and employment is determined by the level of aggregate demand, which is the total amount of spending in the economy. They also believe that the economy can come into equilibrium at any level of output and employment. The only precondition for equilibrium being that the level of aggregate demand is stable. The diagram shows an economy that's in equilibrium producing MY1. This is because the level of aggregate demand is stable. And if you look at the diagram there, it's stable at AD1. This level of spending is sufficient to buy up NY1 at an average price level of AP1. Suppose that the level of aggregate demand now falls. This could be due to a fall in the consumption element of aggregate demand. Perhaps consumer confidence has taken a hit, and as a result, households are saving more. So, what will happen next? The simple answer is that a decrease in AD will cause retail sales to fall. Firms will respond to falling sales by reducing production in order to prevent the build-up of unsold stock. The equilibrium level of GDP will begin to fall as output drops. When firms cut production, they won't need as many factors of production, including labour. As a result, the derived demand for labour will decrease and there'll be a rise in cyclical unemployment. To summarise the Keynesian point of view, decreases in aggregate demand cause recessions. Look at the ASD diagram again and see how the decrease in aggregate demand from AD1 to AD2 causes a decrease in the equilibrium level of real GDP from MY1 to MY2. That's a recession, a fall in real output. In a Keynesian world, cyclical or demand deficient unemployment can be caused by anything that decreases aggregate demand. The Keynesian solution to cyclical unemployment is very simple. The government or central bank must intervene and use reflationary demand-side policies that are designed to increase the level of aggregate demand. On the diagram, the economy is stuck in equilibrium with a huge negative output gap of MY1 to YFE. This is because the level of aggregate demand is stable but very low at just AD1. There's only enough spending in the economy to purchase an output of MY1. To get out of this terrible situation, a net injection of spending is needed. This could come in the form of either a fiscal or a monetary stimulus. Either way, if the level of spending can be increased from 81 to 82, firms will sell more goods. To produce this extra output, firms will need to hire a bigger workforce. As a result, cyclical unemployment will begin to fall. Job done. Classical economists reject the view that unemployment is caused by a lack of aggregate demand. They believe that unemployment is caused by supply-side problems. Problems such as a tax and a benefit system that's reduced the incentive to work. Or maybe there's labour market imperfections such as minimum wages and overly powerful trade unions that are stopping the labour market from reaching a market clearing equilibrium. The classical school distinguishes between two types of unemployment: voluntary and involuntary unemployment. Let's look at these now. The diagram on the right-hand side of the page shows the economy's labour market. Households supply their labour. Most people earn an income in the form of a wage by selling their labour. Yep, you've got it. Most people are working class. They earn a living by selling their labour to receive a wage. The supply of labour curve shown on the diagram is upward sloping. This is because more people will consider giving up their valuable leisure time to work if they're rewarded for that decision via a higher wage rate. Firms, on the other hand, they demand labour. They'll buy more labour if it's cheaper, which explains why the demand for labour curve is downward sloping. The classical school assumes that the labour market is just like any other micro market. It will come into equilibrium at the price and quantity where supply equals demand. The equilibrium level of employment is called the natural rate of employment. On the diagram, this is E1. The equilibrium wage is E1. Note that everybody who wants to work at this wage rate can find work. However, there are some people who are unwilling to work for a wage of WE. These people are voluntarily unemployed. Voluntary unemployment exists when somebody is out of work because they're unwilling to work at the market clearing wage rate. On the diagram, there's currently voluntary unemployment of E1 to E2. To reduce voluntary unemployment, the natural rate of employment must be increased. To do this, there will need to be an increase in the supply of labour. Look at the diagram below. If the supply of labour can be increased from S1 to S2, the natural rate of employment will rise from E1 to E3. This will reduce voluntary unemployment from E1 to E2 to E3 to E2. The classical school advocate market-based supply-side policies to increase the supply of labour. Probably the best way to do this would be to reform the tax and benefit system in a manner that increases the incentive to work. In the UK, many people choose to work part-time rather than full-time due to the tax credit system. Maybe we should cut these welfare benefits in order to increase the supply of labour in Britain. At the same time, we could also increase the personal tax threshold, which is the amount of income you can earn each year before you have to start paying tax. Again, if we did that, we might encourage more people to consider working rather than enjoying leisure time. Involuntary unemployment is the second type of unemployment. It describes a situation where somebody's out of work because they can't find a job at the existing wage rate. Classical economists believe that this type of unemployment is caused by labour market imperfections that stop the labour market from establishing a market clearing equilibrium. Look at the diagram. A socialist government has just introduced a minimum wage of W1, which is well above the market clearing wage. The minimum wage causes the demand for labour to contract. Workers have been priced out of their own jobs by the minimum wage. At W1, firms only want to hire E1 workers. At the same time, the minimum wage has caused the supply of labour to extend. People who previously weren't interested in working are now looking for a job. The problem is that there are not enough jobs available. The minimum wage has caused a permanent disequilibrium in the labour market. This disequilibrium is an excess supply of labour of E1 to E2. Trade unions can also cause involuntary unemployment. This is because trade unions act as a labour market imperfection again. Union leaders use the threat of strike action to unnaturally elevate the wage rate above the market clearing level. According to classical economists, trade unions are a bad idea for the poor because they end up pricing workers out of their own jobs. The classical school's solution to involuntary unemployment is very simple. The state must remove labour market imperfections. If they can do this, the real wage will fall until an equilibrium is established at W2. The decrease in wage rates causes a demand for labour to extend. To remove labour market imperfections, the state should scrap minimum wages and laws that grant trade unions special powers.